Welcome to another episode of the Antifragility Reframe Podcast. I am Dr. Frank L. Douglas, your host, and my guest today is Mr. Ashton, a 45-year entrepreneur, not 45-year-old, but 45 years as an entrepreneur. And he's the author of the book, Growing Your Own. And he has some interesting stories to tell about the various shifts in perspectives that he had that caused him to be anti-fragile. I think he said he became anti-fragile at the age of 50, if I remember. And why that age is important, that's the age at which I became free of death. And so my wife and I always, always celebrate that. Ms. Ashton, welcome.
Very pleased to be here, Frank. Looking forward to our conversation.
So am I. As I usually do, I ask my guests to tell us a bit of their journey that helps us to understand the challenges they had and the challenges that made them to become anti-fragile.
Sure. And I love that term anti-fragile. Until I came across your podcast, I had not run across that before, but I think it's great. I began my career in the real estate business as a developer with a large real estate developer by the name of Trammell Crow. Fantastic experience. And I early in my career, I exceeded my expectations. I was making more money than I expected to make. I liked the real estate business, but I didn't love the real estate business. And I had always seen myself as a small businessman. So after 10 years there, 5 as a partner, I decided to go into small business. So I sold my interest back to them. I was 32 or 33, I think, at that time. Full of confidence and very pleased with all that I had learned under the great people that I worked with and for at Trammell Crow. I began buying businesses, doing a little bit of turnaround work, sold a couple of businesses. Everything was going well. And in 1988, I purchased an HVAC company that I knew was in serious financial trouble. But at 39 years old, I was certain that I could do about a 2-year turnaround on that business. What I didn't know was that number one, the business was in worse shape than I had analyzed. And number two, there was a financial crisis in the economy coming around the corner. And so by the time 1990 rolled around, the banking industry had virtually collapsed. And I think maybe in our part of the country, which is in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I think it was even more exaggerated than it was elsewhere because we're such a real estate dominated economy. I had 2 major forest fires on my hands at the same time. And I had to learn by doing. But what I also learned along the way is that other people were navigating those challenges better than I was. And so for the first time in my business life, I was staring complete failure uh, just right down the barrel. And I was raised in a family where failure was not an option. And there was tremendous shame around the idea that you would fail at anything. Even minor failures were met with shame. And so that was very paralyzing to me. And I really, really struggled. So by that time, I was in my early 40s. I also began to see that the leadership style that I had inherited from my dad, who was a very authoritarian, very strong, very hardworking, very smart man, but he was an authoritarian leader, kind of a my way or the highway guy. And so not only was the business in trouble and the economy was in trouble, but my leadership style wasn't working either. So I had a 3-pronged failure looking me straight in the face. And that's where I realized that some changes were in order or I was going to go down the tubes totally.
And so what was the major shift? We talk about shift in perspectives to reframe, and you clearly had to reframe to do
I
things
did. And
differently, see
I
things
have
differently.
been very fortunate to be around some great leaders in my life, starting with Trammell Crow. Frankly, he was a visionary and humble man who empowered people. And so I relied on his um, model some, but I also looked around among my friends, also most of whom are also entrepreneurs. And as I said earlier, they were having more success than I was, and yet they were facing some of the similar problems that I was. They were just doing it better, and so I began to look at my friends and see how they handled situations, and I began to copy behaviors and change from that authoritarian style to more of a not really a collaborative style, but I became much more of a listener. And the other mentor in my life at that point was my wife. I was not very relational, and my wife is highly relational. And although I never went to her and said, "Hey, would you mentor me in relationships?" She's so good at it naturally that I just sat back and I watched. And I'm a pretty good observer, and I was at a low point in my life, so I guess it was pretty important to begin observing other people in my life. And really, although I'd always been a reader and I'd always gained a lot from books and audiobooks and periodicals, the majority of the change in my life at that point came from observation. And then the third major change for me is that I reconnected with my faith. And I had been raised in a religious home. Um, I had gotten away from it, but the home that I was raised in was a very, um, I won't say unloving, relatively cold, I guess. And so I guess because my wife taught me to be more relational, I then was more open to the idea of dependence on a higher power. And all of those things came together. And by the time I was 50, I had I had recovered my momentum. I was having success again, and the next 27 years have been a gradual rebuilding phase that was far more aware of other people, far more aware of the importance of listening, and far more important that I was just a minor player in this overall drama, and there was a higher power who was always available to guide me if I just simply asked for help.
What is wonderful for me as I'm listening to your journey is that the elements that I discuss with respect to anti-fragile reframing, you've already discussed three to four of them. One, shifting perspective. There you had a life challenge, which caused you to begin to look at things differently because the way you were doing it and the way you were looking at it, that was not working. So you needed to have a different lens or look through a different lens and so get a different perspective. And you then did a second thing we talk about, and that is expanding access to ideas, access to people. And you look to your colleagues and use them as mentors. So all of those aspects that make one successful, that were there happening for you. And what is wonderful about your story is that you were initiating. You recognized that you had a challenge. You didn't let that challenge destroy you, but rather you began to look around, look at the examples of those who are successful right in your very home, and begin to model and to collaborate with those. So you said the last 27 years now have been just wonderful. You want to tell us a couple of highlights of these last 27 years?
As I realized the importance of other people, and as I improved my relations within the company and with my employees, and actually outside the company, my friends and family as well, I began to really enjoy empowering people to become more than they ever could be. And so we have a lot of success stories within our small company which is primarily a trades company. So we have blue collar employees who really don't have a thought of being in leadership. They're very good at what they do, and they're happy with that. But they don't look outside that. They don't think about the day they might be running a company or running a department. And so my challenge for the last several years has been to take as many of those employees, grow them into leaders that could actually take over my company. They did that in December of last year. I actually retired, moved out of the building, and although I still own the companies, and keep contact with the president now. I don't go in the company, and it's very satisfying for me to look at the people that I helped grow, and see their successes and see their challenges, and I'm still available if they need me. But it has given me then a new job to do in retirement. I wrote a book about the overall principles that I taught in the leadership course, and so now that's what I'm doing.
You have exemplified a couple, in fact, the remaining two elements that I talk about in anti-fragile reframing, and that is one, multiplying benefit, benefiting other people. And when we look for solutions to our problems that benefit other people, we tend to come up with solutions that actually also make us better. And the final one is having a growth outcome mindset.
Mhm.
And you clearly have done that. You've grown your business, you've grown people, and now you have retired, and they have taken over because you have grown them. You had a growth mindset. So
My specialty is in working with people who haven't become leaders yet, who think they might want to, or with small business owners who need to develop leaders. So my principles are very basic. The book is a series of 2.5-page chapters illustrating 35 different principles. And just to go on a couple of the groupings, obviously communication. Communication is what's wrong with most organizations. But then it moves into accountability, proactivity, the importance of intellectual curiosity, and then some problem solving in there too. And it's a book that is intentionally written for people who are not book readers. The kind of people I train, as good as John Maxwell is, they're not going to read a John Maxwell book. But this is something they can learn in bite-sized pieces, and then you can take a principle and apply it today and see results tomorrow. And that was intentional. It's kind of the way I learned, so it was easy for me to write it that way.
that is wonderful. Mr. Ashton, thank you very much for sharing with us your journey, for exemplifying the principles, the elements of anti-fragile reframing. And thank you for growing the people who work with you.